I am less words than usual. God, what is this?
Tsunami guidelines?
Tsunami guidelines. My daughter did a video at some point in time.
Okay. Is your daughter expecting a tsunami in Kennesaw? Or?
Yes. Irma is coming. Now. Actually, before this, I think I have a plan. I'm getting a little bit less words than before. I graded about 10 of your assignments, so it's better than before. I'm not even done with assignment 1. What I am going to do, combining suggestions from people. What I will do is I'm gonna create an assignment this weekend that will be for chapters 3, 4, and 5. And I'm gonna make like one exercise from each chapter that will be graded, and give you a couple more that I will not grade. If you ask questions about them, we can solve the questions in class or something like that, but I will not grade them. In fact, I would appreciate if you don't give them to me. Just because that means less stuff for me to grade. But they will not be graded. The assignment will count double compared to the other 2 assignments, just because. What the heck is this?
I
Oh.
wanted to start asking you guys, how was the assignment?
Die.
I discovered something.
Oh.
What happened?
Very good.
That's good. I'm recording my own, playing my own video. How about that? The other thing that we probably ought to do is, and this is even more horrible, come up with a day for the midterm. And we'll cover up until chapter 5. We have seen 3.5 of, or a piece of 4, so we'll finish 4 and we'll finish 5. Today is the 6th, right?
Yes.
And according to Kenneth academic calendar 2017, the last day to withdraw without academic penalty is October 4th, which is a Wednesday. So our, let's see, 4, 5, we could have the midterm as early as the 20th.
That's your birthday, though.
That's my birthday. No, not mine. Somebody's birthday. Not mine. Yeah, it's a very exciting birthday. I don't even know whose birthday. Oh, it's my son's birthday. Not mine. Well, we could have it on the 27th. Chances are that the 27th would be horrible because everybody else is going to be putting their midterms around the 27th. No?
No, we don't. I don't want that. I think the real question, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, will you be able to grade all of them in time for the
Yes! Yes. But they will be graded on the 4th at 4:49 p.m. Yeah, having more time is always better. I will eventually, but 27 would be horrible. We could do the 20 or the 25th.
I'm okay with either.
Yeah, it's open, don't really mind.
Is it gonna make a difference?
Yeah, 25th.
Okay, who would rather vote for the 25th? Raise your hand if you prefer the 25th. It's either the 20 or the 25th. No, that's not an option. 20 or 25.
20.
Okay, who would rather have the 20?
Get it over with.
The 25s have it. So we'll have it on the 25th.
Okay.
And we will hopefully be doing a review on the 18th and probably start on the next chapter on the 20th. I do reviews, yeah. And that will also help me figure out what the heck am I going to ask in the test. This is the first time I'm teaching this class. I don't know what the exam looks like. I will know on the 25th. Maybe the 24th. Maybe. But I always like to make a review so that we all agree at least on what's on the test and what's not and that kind of stuff.
Low battery.
Oh, low battery. Any questions about that stuff? No. Is the 25th, right? Let me. Send myself an email. If not, I'll be looking at that stuff. Oh no, that's my son. This me. This version of me. Monday, Sep 25, right? Cool. Sent. It's all good. That guy knows it. Okay. With some luck, I'll even have all your assignments graded. Please don't have 1 and 2 graded. So, let's go back to algorithms. We talked a little bit about greedy algorithms. You die, you undie. What's the idea of a greedy algorithm, right? Have some definition of best at any given time. Just choose whatever appears to be best, right? Do a local decision. Just choose whatever appears to be best and hope that eventually that leads you to the right solution. Does that make sense? And we have to, well, what is best and all of that stuff depends on the problem. Does it always lead you to the right solution? No, right? As you have seen in life, doing what would bring you the most enjoyment right now will not lead you to happiness, right? Probably. So we know that it doesn't necessarily lead to a global optimum. We will see that for some problems, it does lead to a global optimum. For some problems, and we'll see later, it's actually a good heuristic. It doesn't lead you to a global optimum, but it doesn't terribly suck, usually. For other problems, it terribly sucks. One important thing, right, for the most part, this will have our choices sorted in some way, and most of our algorithm becomes how do you sort and how do you keep them sorted, right? One example of a greedy algorithm that works very well is coin changing. In the US, right, given the currency denominations in the US, 1, 5, 10, 25, 100, devise a method to pay amount to a customer using fewest coins. And that's normally how you give change, right? You don't even think about it, but that's how you normally do it. Except when you're trying to optimize your wallet and then you do it the reverse, right? You give them as many pennies as possible to get rid of that. The cashier's algorithm is at each iteration, add the coin of the largest value that would work, right? So if it's more than 25, give them a quarter, subtract 25. Now the rest, if it's more than 10, give them a dime, right? If it's more than 5, give them a nickel, and if not, give them pennies. And yeah, I don't tend to consider dollar coins. We do have dollar coins. Nobody likes them, but we have them. So that is basically the pseudo-pretty way of doing the cache algorithm. The cache algorithm would have an array of coin denominations, right? And we'll keep doing it like that. Is it optimal? For the US, it is, right? If the number of pennies is the optimal solution would have at most 4 pennies. Because if it had 5, then you could just replace that with a nickel, right? Or if it had 6, you could replace 5 of those with a nickel, right? So the best solution, the optimal solution would have at most 4 pennies. It would also have at most 1 nickel, because if you had 2, you could replace those 2 with a dime. The number of nickels and dimes would be less than or equal to 2, because if you had 3, you could replace with a quarter, right? Or a quarter and a nickel. And so for the US coins, right, the cashier's algorithm is optimal. You could do it by induction over the number of pennies. Does it work for every other set of denominations? No, right? For postage stamps, right, it doesn't work. And depending on the denominations, the cashier algorithm may actually lead us to a dead end. So if you had 7, 8, and 9 as your denominations, and you were trying to do 15 cents, the cashier's algorithm will lead you to a dead end. But we can see by inspection that there is a possible solution, right? Does this idea make sense? You understand the cashier's algorithm. You understand how is this generic. First of all, how is it greedy? Why is it greedy? What do you always choose? Largest possible coin, right? So you just try. This looks like it could be right? This looks like it could be the best possibility. For certain conditions, it would lead to optimal solutions. For certain, it would not, right? It's a super simple greedy algorithm. Most greedy algorithms tend to be relatively simple. But any questions? Cool. Let's talk about more stuff. Interval scheduling. And we'll do 2 or 3 variations on scheduling. A job J starts at Sj and finishes at Fj. 2 jobs are called compatible if they don't overlap. And the goal is to find a maximum subset of mutually compatible jobs. What is maximum in this case? A? No, what does maximum mean?
The most jobs?
The most jobs, right? Plain number of jobs. I don't care, they're all equally important, they're all equally good. I just want the biggest possible number of jobs. In this case, jobs like D and E and F and G are incompatible because they overlap, right? And we would not count it as overlapping if they have on the same line, right? So B and E don't overlap. Does that make sense? Okay, I could say, okay, let me do a greedy algorithm, right? I would sort my jobs in a particular way, and then get the one that looks the best, and eliminate all the overlapping ones, and then get the one that looks the best from the rest, and so on. orderings could I choose, right? What kinds of evaluations could I choose? I could choose earliest start time. So consider jobs in ascending order of SJ, right? My earliest start time, earliest finish time, shortest interval, right? Maybe if I try the shortest jobs, right, I could fit more. It makes sense. Or fewest conflict, right? Count the number of conflicting jobs and try to do as few conflicts as possible. They all seem reasonable, right? Would they be optimal? Well, maybe. We have counterexamples that show that earliest start time would not be optimal, right? If you have a really long job that starts very early, that would not be optimal as long as you have 2 or more jobs that would, you could replace that big job with 2 or more. Does that make sense? We are just counting number of jobs, so we don't care that one job is bigger than the other. Shortest interval, if we had something like this, shortest interval would give us a non-optimal solution, right? Fewest conflict, something like this would, if we choose the ones with fewest conflicts, we would choose this one first, and then this and this, whereas we could choose all these 4, right? So these are counterexamples that show that those things will not lead to the optimal solution. Does that make sense? Maybe they'll produce good solutions, but they will not produce an optimal one. Earliest finish time, however, will produce an optimal solution. We have really one that works, right? So what do we do? Given an array of starts and ends, right, and the length of the array, sort the jobs by finish time. How long does that take? How long does sorting take?
And log in.
N log n, right? For purposes of this class, let's count it as n log n. For at least comparison sorts, it's debatable whether you should say n or n log n, but let's use n log n because that. So what do we do? Go to the first element in the array, add it to our set, right? Or we'll start our set as the empty set, go through every element, see, if the job is compatible with all the jobs we have in the set, add it to the set. And keep going, right? How long does it take us to see if a job is compatible or not, or something like that, right? Well, since we are going by finish time, right? We only care about the finish time. Does that make sense? We don't need to check with every other thing inside the array. Does that idea make sense? We don't need to compare with every other job, something like that. We just need to check, did it start before this end, right? If it did, then it's not compatible. If it didn't, then it is. And so, given that, we can implement this in order of n log n. Why n log n? Sort, right? We sort and then we just go through the array once, right? And decide whether we add it or not. Yes, no, maybe.
Is
I'm
there a
seeing the
picture
cubes.
of that going on the next slide?
No, maybe. Not really. Should we try to do an example?
Could you just go
Yeah.
back to the graph that shows shows it, the one before that? That one. Like, show us how the algorithm
Okay.
predicts B, E, and H.
Yes. Cool. We sort this by end time.
Okay.
So which one goes first?
B.
B, right?
So it's not in. So he's gonna finish it first.
Ha 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 ha. So we would sorting would get B, then
C.
C, then A, right? Then E, D, F, G, and H.
Okay, so starting time, it don't matter.
You don't care about the starting time.
For the order.
Sorry?
For the order. You don't care.
For the order, actually for the whole thing, right? What are we gonna do? We're gonna do first of all, we start with an empty set, right? Then add the first element, B, right? What's my latest ending time?
H.
Sorry, for now, out of these elements.
4.
4, right?
Yeah.
Now, I look at C. Is it compatible? That is it start after 4?
So the compatibility check includes start time and finish time. to
It
check
doesn't really
compatible.
it doesn't really matter with it's the finish time of the whole thing. My earliest finish time is 4, so nothing that starts before 4 is going to matter,
Okay.
right? They are all incompatible. So that is what allows me to just go linearly through this, right? Why are they all incompatible? Because if not, they would cross, right? If they started before and then after, then they would necessarily cross with this. Does that make sense? So B is not compatible. Sorry, A is not compatible. Sorry, never mind. C is not compatible. That's the first one, right? So I cross it. A is not compatible. E is compatible. So I'll add it here. And I'll make this 4 into 7. And then I keep going. I'm on E, so D is not compatible because it starts before 7. F is not compatible because it starts at 5, which is before 7. G is not compatible because it starts at 6, which is before 7. And H is compatible, right? Sorry, H, and then that is 11, and I'm done.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Does this idea make sense? Does the algorithm make sense? Do you see why it would work? Could we find, right? Could we have missed something, right? When we had B and E, could we have missed one that wasn't, right? That wasn't going to overlap with them, right? We
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
We couldn't, and that's right. It would matter, right? Imagine that, say, basically, could we have missed one between E and H, right? so that it wouldn't overlap at E and H.
Oh, including each other.
Its ending time would have to be 8, so it
Exactly.
doesn't matter.
Its ending time would be before, so we would see. Does that make sense? So we can't mix. Now let's put it more formally, but so we can see why we can implement it in order of n log n, right? Because it's really just sort and then I just do one pass. Now, let's prove that it's optimal. If it is not optimal, right? Let's call I1, I2, Ik the set of jobs selected by the greedy, right? J1, J2, and J2 up to Jm denote the set of jobs in an optimal solution, right? We would have M be greater than K, because that would mean, right? That's bigger. Now, let's assume that my greedy and my optimal solutions agree up to job R. So I don't care about those, right? They're all the same, so they're all good. Now let's look at the what did the greedy choose and what did the optimal choose, right? Imagine that optimal chose this as JR plus 1. Greedy, by definition, chooses the one that ends earlier, right? We are only adding one job. Are we doing any better, right? Is there a way that we could do better? Well, no, right? If I only have this stuff up until end of IR plus 1, right? So replacing the optimal solution, replacing the one that the greedy chose, would give you a solution that's at least as good. Does that make sense? Once you do that, then, right? And then you could choose, right? You could keep doing this, and so greedy is optimal, right? And there is nothing else you could do other than ties and things like that, right? Does the algorithm make sense? Does the proof of optimality make sense? Do you see this argument of, because it's going to be important, oh, let me see, can I just transform your solution into this one, right? That's my proof that it works. And that's going to be one important way of showing that greedy is optimal. A slightly different problem, still talking about intervals, is interval partitioning. And they use lectures, but it's scheduling things on machines and things like that, right? Imagine that I have a job with a start and end time on a machine. Or imagine that I have lectures in a college, right? I have tons of lectures with start and end times. What's the minimum number of classrooms that I need, right? So imagine, and this is kind of, since we repeat over a week, we'll just use each week, right? And then we'll repeat that week forever. A lecture J starts at Sj and finishes at Fj. And my goal is now to find the minimum number of classrooms to schedule all lectures so that no two lectures occur at the same time in the same room. Right? For example, here, this schedule uses 4 classrooms to schedule 10 lectures, right? I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. And I need 4 classrooms, right? Could I do better? Is it good enough, right? Again, right, we assume that the intervals are open on one side. Doesn't terribly matter which side. So that I could officially start one class at 10, or end one class at 11 and start the next one right at 11. And if not, you just add one or right, modify that stuff. What could I do? What would be greedy things? The greedy template would say sort the lectures, right? Assign each lecture to an available classroom, and if you can't, then allocate a new classroom. What could I do? Earliest start time, earliest finish time, shortest interval, fewest conflicts. Which one do you think will work? Fewest conflicts might work, right?
What about earliest start time?
Earliest start time,
You don't have an idea when they finish, so you can't. Can you even order them? Or no?
I mean, I would have, right, when they start and when they finish. So I could sort them by start time and then start from there. If I'm not mistaken, we are going to have, right, this is kind of this same problem in disguise. Which one worked in here? Which one worked in here?
Earliest finish time.
So earliest finish time is going to work in here too. Maybe. No, it's not true. I remember wrong. If I go by earliest finish time, right, I could have something like this, where I would schedule one, right, then two, then three would be scheduled in one, right? Oh, I would need. This thing needs to be a little bit longer, right?
Well, if it's earliest finish time, then the one that got stuck back on one.
Oh, the
is-
one with this.
Yeah, it's assumed first
Yeah.
over the one on top.
I would put that one on one, and then mess up three, right? Yeah, good. Shortest interval would also mess us up the same way, right? Fewest conflicts can also mess us up the same way. The one that's going to work in this case is earliest start time. And it's basically sort by start time, go through every lecture. If it is compatible with some classroom, schedule it there. Else, allocate a new classroom, schedule it there, and keep going, right? First, can we do it in, right? Well, we're going to say we can do this in order of, in n log n time. How, right? Well, sorting takes order of n log n, right? But now in here, we don't need to keep track of just one number, like in the previous example. We need to keep track of a bunch of them, right? Because now we have a bunch of classrooms. But we can keep the classrooms in a priority queue. Which tell me the finish time of its last lecture, right? We have seen that a heap will let me do a priority queue in where finding the minimum is actually order of 1, right? But inserting and deleting is order of log n, so I would need to reinsert, right? Potentially, I need to delete, assign the lecture to it, so now I have changed it, so I insert it again with a different time. And that will take me order of log n, will take me 2 log n's, because it's one delete and one insert, but it's still log n, right? Now, to determine whether the lecture is compatible with some classroom, I just need to compare it with the minimum, right? And that's it. I am going to have n operations on the priority queue, or yeah, potentially n operations on the priority queue, but they are all, right? So they are all log n, so it's n log n, which is the same as my sorting.
So in the prior slide, when it said in the pseudocode allocate a new classroom, is that allocating a new priority queue?
No, that's inserting a new element on the priority queue. Your classrooms are just 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So it's just, oh, now I'm at 3, so now I allocate a new classroom, so now I'm at 4.
Okay.
Right?
So you create the priority queue, so the classrooms are known beforehand, and you're just kind of moving up through them.
They are not really, they are not known. That's the allocate a new classroom. Well, I'm just calling them 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I don't care which ones, right?
Yeah.
I'm not caring about does it have space for 20 students or anything like that.
Okay.
Oh, that would complicate matters a heck of a lot, right? So I'm just increasing the number. You could think about it as I have all my classrooms known in advance and I'm starting from 0, right? And I'll decide whether I have. What's the best that I could do? For interval partitioning, right? The depth of a set of open intervals is the maximum number of intervals that contain a given time, right? That's the biggest set of things that overlap, right? That all of them overlap. That's my minimum set of classrooms, right? I cannot do any better. If I have 3 things that happening at 10:15, then I'm doomed, right? I need at least 3 classrooms. The earliest start time algorithm is going to find a schedule whose number of classrooms actually equals to that, which is why we know that is optimal. So how can we prove that? If D is the number of classrooms that the algorithm allocates, classroom D is open because we needed to schedule a lecture, say J, that is incompatible with all the other D-1 classrooms, right? So that means there is a set of lectures or intervals that all overlap. And since we sorted by start time, right, all of these incompatibilities are caused by lectures that start no later than this, so I can't just not schedule something. And so we have at least the lectures that overlap this time, and so all schedules will use at least the classrooms. More stuff with intervals and scheduling. Isn't this fun? Imagine that you now have one resource, a machine or something like that, right? Your job, J, requires Tj units of processing time and is due at time Bj. What you, and right, if job J starts at time Fj, it will finish at time Fj equals Sj plus Tj, right? And T is the time, D is the due time, S is start, F is finish. Right? And start and finish are determined by me, the algorithmer. We are gonna define the lateness to be 0 if you're not late, and Fj, your ending time, your finish time, minus Dj if you are late, right? So it's the maximum of 0 and Fj minus Dj, right? Because if you're early, that will be negative, and so you'll get 0, right? Your goal is to schedule all jobs to minimize the maximum lateness. Do you understand the problem?
So in maximum lateness, on this, on the example it shows at the bottom, it's however late the last job comes into place is the overall maximum lateness, or does it increase over time?
It includes everything.
Sum of all latency.
It's
Okay.
not the sum, it's the max.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's not the sum, it's the max. If job 1 was late 5 units, and job 2 was late 10 units, job 3 wasn't late, job 4 wasn't late, job 5 was late 2 units, 10 is the maximum lateness.
Okay.
Not necessarily the one from the last, right? Out of all of them, the one that was more screwed up.
So the lateness of each job is kind of put into an array, and then not an array, but not like how it's programmed, but how you think about it. Like the lateness of each job is counted, and the maximum of that set of latenesses is the max lateness.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So in this example, right, there is your table. Job 3 was due at time 9, so I'm not late. Job 2 was due at time 8, and it ends at time 3, so I'm not late. Job 6 was due at 15 and ends at 5. Job 6 ends at 8, but it was due at 6, so my maximum lateness is 2. Job 5 is okay, and then job 4 was due at 9, but I put it at 15, so I get a higher lateness, right? Is this optimal? Maybe. Probably not. Can you see something that you could do?
You could probably switch D4 and D5.
D4 and D5, definitely,
Yeah.
yes, right?
Switch D1
And then possibly
and 6.
switch D1. Well, D1 and D6 wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Well, would give you less total lateness, but the max wouldn't matter because this is the max.
Yeah.
So switching D4 and D5 would give you a better one. Does that make sense? So again, create a template, schedule the jobs according to some order, right? And just schedule them that way. What can we do? We could schedule them in ascending order of processing time, so do the shortest one first. Earliest deadline or smallest slack. Slack is how late you could schedule it, right? Those are some possibilities. We could also sort them alphabetically or something, but that would be dumb. We could. There is counterexamples if we do shortest processing time first. My job 1 takes 1 unit of time, but it's due at 100. My job 2 takes 10 units of time and it's due at 10. I'll schedule job 1 first, and that is the wrong choice, right? Because that will give me a lateness of 90, 100, right? And whereas scheduling 2 first would get me a lateness of 0, right? Smallest slack, now you do the reverse. Scheduling job by smallest slack, we will schedule job 2 first because it has no slack, whereas job 1 has 1 unit of slack. And so job 1 would end up with a lateness of 10, right? Sorry, 9. So it ends at 11, which is a lateness of 9. Scheduling the other way around would get me a lateness of 1, which is much better, right? However, if I schedule at based on lateness, right? We will see that this ends up being optimal, right? So how do we know that it's optimal? Well, first, and we'll just schedule them one after the other. First of all, does the optimal schedule? Can the optimal schedule have idle time? It could if I have tons of slack, but if it does, then just pushing them all towards the right would still be optimal. Does that make sense? I could have several optimal schedules, but pushing them all towards the right would still be optimal. So there is at least an optimal schedule with no idle time, right? The earliest deadline first schedule has no idle time because that's how we are building it, right? Just schedule them right after the other. Given a schedule S and inversion is a pair of jobs I and j such that I is less than j, but j is scheduled before I, right? Assuming my sorting. So basically, this job will have a deadline, right? The deadlines will be swapped with the scheduling, right? I will schedule one with an earlier deadline after one with a later deadline, right? That's an inversion. The earliest deadline first schedule has no inversions, of course. There is one more thing. If a schedule with no idle time has an inversion, right, it's going to have at least one pair of inverted jobs scheduled consecutively. Um, um, we claim that swapping two adjacent inverted jobs reduces the number of inversions by 1 and does not increase the max lateness. Right? Maybe decreases it, but doesn't increase it. Right? Why? Because the lateness of this guy is going to end in here, but it's necessarily, in terms of max, less than the lateness of this guy because it ends. It's not due until later. Right? And so we can see that the earliest deadline first schedule is optimal because if it wasn't, we would choose S star to be the optimal schedule with the fewest number of inversions. There may be more than one optimal schedule. Let's choose the one with the fewest number of inversions. It will necessarily have an adjacent inversion, and then swapping I and J will decrease the number of inversions, but we just said, right, that it was the one with less number of inversions, so that will be a contradiction.
My question is, the whole inversion argument, or the introduction of inversions, is just, it's a little confusing, because why would inversions even be a part of it if your algorithm is bringing them in earliest deadline first?
Because what we need to prove is that that algorithm is actually optimal.
Okay.
That you couldn't do better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So by saying that the inversions don't change the maximum lateness, you're saying that even if they were starting at different times, we put them in a different order, as long as it follows that basic earliest deadline first.
The earliest deadline first will never have an inversion.
Okay.
Right? Because I will schedule the one. An inversion means you have a later deadline, but I scheduled you first.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have A and B, A is not due until tomorrow, A is due until tomorrow, B is due today,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll do A before B. That's an inversion.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the algorithm we have has no inversions whatsoever. And so by saying that if you have an inversion, you can swap and undo the inversion, and that will give you no worse than that. Right?
Okay, so it's at least as good as the inverted
Yes.
version.
Many times it will be better. It's just if you are uninverting the one with the most,
Mm-hmm.
then you would do better. If not, you would do equally good.
And these inversions are all adjacent. Like, it's pretty much impossible to do a...
Well, you could have, but if you have one that's not adjacent, you are also going to have one that is adjacent.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
That's the, right?
Mhm.
And so you could basically keep moving the inversions, right?
Okay, thank you. That's just the inversions threw me for a loop.
Yeah. No, and many times you need to do this. And many times the sucky part about this is that in a way there is no particular reason to study these problems except that they show that greedy algorithms work, right? I mean, the really important thing is to know greedy algorithms work, right? The really important thing is greedy algorithms sometimes work, right? And you need to figure out whether they work or not. B, there's a bunch of algorithms, there's a bunch of problems that look like this, and you can Google them and figure out whether, right, your algorithm will be solved by greedy or not, right? Your problem will be solved by greedy or not. These ones are not terrible, like, yes, they are mildly important, right? They appear all over, but it's not, right? In fact, they're not really they're very simplified, right? But on the other hand, right, you will have to memorize this for this class. It's really horrible. It's not, the point is really not to memorize these things. When we see some of the graph algorithms, you have to memorize those. Those appear everywhere. These are not terribly important. They're just really good examples.
Okay.
On the other hand, I have to talk about inversions and things like that. Important things, right? How can we prove that greedy works? And this is the important stuff, right? But in order to abstract from this, you need to do a million, and we won't really get a chance to do a million in this class. You could choose that the greedy algorithm stays ahead, right? After each step, you're at least as good as any other one. You can also discover a structural bound and then show that you achieve that bound, or exchange, right, and show that you can exchange to get from your solution, from the optimal to the greedy without losing. So you're at least as good. That's what we just did, right? The bound is this one, sorry, which was the depth, right, for interval partitioning. And the other one is the other one, sorry, words fail me, for interval scheduling, right? We show that we are ahead at every step, right? There is a ton of other greedy algorithms. Talk a little bit about optimal caching. Just to show, this will not be on the test, I promise. But it was on the book, so we should look at it. It's actually a very important problem. It's just that the algorithm is kind of a good intro, but you have a cache with capacity to store k items, and you have a sequence of m items requests. A cache hit is when the item is in the cache when requested. A cache miss is when the item is not in the cache, and so you need to bring it into the cache and then evict some existing item. Where do you see this stuff? Which one of your other classes?
Operating
Architecture.
systems.
Yes, right? Architecture and operating systems, right? And databases, but you'd never see it in databases because we just say, yeah, the database does it, right? So we have caches all over, right? Your goal is to minimize the number of evictions because, well, so your real goal is to minimize the number of cache misses, right? But they are the same thing, right? A cache miss is going to have an eviction if you're full, right? As an example, if your k, the size of your cache was 2, your initial cache was AB, requests are ABC, BCAA, the optimal eviction schedule would have 2 evictions, right? The problem is, who do I evict, right?
In this case, the one that was called the least recently.
There is, right, different, yeah, different possibilities, right? This is the stuff that you see in operating systems, right? You have LIFO or FIFO, right? LIFO says last in, first out. Evict the one that I just put in, right? Because chances are that you're not going to need it, right? You're not going to need it until later. FIFO, evict the one that I put the oldest one in the cache, right? Then there is LRU and LFU would require you to keep track of when or how many accesses, right? LRU evict the element whose most recent access was earliest, so the oldest one that nobody has looked at. And LFU, the one that has been least frequently requested. If you had clairvoyancy, if you could, right, which one should you do? Well, evict the item in the cache that's not going to be requested soon. The one that's going to be requested the farthest in the future. Yes. Right? So does that make sense? There is proof that that actually works. And then there is all sorts of things to show that it's not terribly important. Is this terribly useful? No. Couple of important things. In this case, right? Why is this not terribly useful? Can you know which one will not be requested in the future? No, right? I mean, it's a really cool thing, it's a really cool result, but you have online schedules. You don't know which one's going to be requested in the future, right? If you have offline schedules where the full sequence of requests is known, you could, maybe compiler optimization, you could do a few of those things. For online, which is the reality, you don't know what's going on, right? And in a way, this tried to approximate that theoretical thing. But this will not be in the test because it's not terribly useful. It is a good idea to. It is useful to see that this relates to other classes and stuff. This stuff is like, I never see this problem.
We were doing that in 5040 over the summer.
Yes,
Well,
you
that-
were.
That was operating system, so yeah,
Yes.
that's what I said along.
Yeah, you see it in operating systems, right? But you don't necessarily use the optimal thing because you never know which one will come in the future. You just say, oh, this is what I do, and then I just do this other stuff. And actually, normally, well, yeah, I'm a databases guy. What do you do in databases? Get more RAM. Then it's like, oh, what if I'm having cache misses? Get more freaking RAM. That tends to be the solution to everything. Anyway, next class we'll finish chapter 4, and I will, over the weekend, post an assignment and email you guys that it is there.
I had a database question for you, actually.
Okay, one sec. Let me